The Roman calendar changed its form several times between the founding of Rome and the fall of the Roman Empire. The common calendar widely used today is known as the Gregorian calendar and is a refinement of the Julian calendar, where the average length of the year has been adjusted from 365.25 days to 365.2425 days. From at least the period of Augustus on, calendars were often inscribed in stone and displayed publicly. Such calendars are called fasti. History. The original Roman calendar is believed to have been a lunar calendar, which may have been based on one of the Greek lunar calendars, as the time between new moons averages 29.5 days. Its months were constructed to be either hollow or full. Calendar of Romulus. Roman writers attributed the original Roman calendar to Romulus, the mythical founder of Rome, though there is no other evidence for the existence of such a calendar, and Romulus was often cited as the founder of practices whose origins were unknown to later Romans. According to these writers, Romulus's calendar had 10 months, with the spring equinox in the first month. The regular calendar year thus consisted of 304 days, with the winter days after the end of December and before the beginning of the following March not being assigned to any month. The origins of the names are also not entirely clear or agreed upon by modern scholars. Some ancient explanations are Martius in honor of Mars, the god of war; Aprilis from aperio, to open. Earth opens to receive seed; Maius from Ma, goddess of growth; Iunius from Iunia. The remaining 6 months were named with respect to the position on the calendar, the numbers 5 to 10 in Latin being quinque, sex, septem, octo, novem and decem. The months were named Quintilis, Sextilis, September, October, November, and December. Calendar of Numa. Further reforms were attributed, again without firm evidence, to Numa Pompilius, the second of the 7 traditional kings of Rome. The Romans considered even numbers to be unlucky, so Numa took 1 day from each of the 6 months with 30 days, reducing the number of days in the 10 previously defined months by a total of 6 days. There were 51 previously unallocated winter days, to which were added the 6 days from the reductions in the days in the months, making a total of 57 days. These he made into 2 months, January and February, which he prefixed to the previous 10 months. January was given 29 days, while February had the unlucky number of 28 days, suitable for the month of purification. This made a regular year 355 days long in place of the previous 304 days of the Romulus calendar. Of the 11 months with an odd number of days, 4 had 31 days each and 7 had 29 days each. Reforms of Gnaeus Flavius. In 304 BC, Gnaeus Flavius, a pontifical secretary, introduced a series of reforms. It is generally believed that he initiated the custom of publishing the calendar in advance of the month, depriving the pontiffs of some of the power, but allowing for a more consistent calendar for official business. The Julian calendar. Julius Caesar, as Pontifex Maximus, reformed the calendar in 46 BC. The new calendar became known as the Julian calendar. Quintilla was renamed Lulius in honor of Julius Caesar in 44 BC by Mark Antony. A further change was made during the reign of his successor, Augustus, when, apparently following the Senate, the plebiscite Lex Pacuvia de Mens Augusto renamed Sextilis Augustus in 08 BC. Some documents state that the date of the change of the name started between 26 and 23 BC, but the date of the Lex Pacuvia is certain. Intercalation. The regular calendar had only 355 days, which meant that it would quickly be unsynchronized with the solar year, causing, for example, agricultural festivals to occur out of season. The The Roman solution to this problem was to periodically lengthen the calendar by adding extra days to February. February consisted of 2 parts, each with an odd number of days. The first part ended with the Terminalia on the 23rd, which was considered the end of the religious year, and the 5 remaining days formed the second part. To keep the calendar year roughly aligned with the solar year, a leap month called the mensis intercalaris was added from time to time between these 2 parts of February. The second part of February was incorporated in the intercalary month as its last 5 days, with no change either in the dates of the festivals observed on them. This follows naturally from the fact that the days after the Ides of February and the Ides of Intercalaris both counted down to the calends of March. The Nona and Ides of Intercalaris occupied the normal positions of the 5th and 13th of the month. The 3rd century rite of Censorinus says, when it was thought necessary to add an intercalary month of 22 or 23 days, so that the civil year should correspond to the natural year, this intercalation was in preference made in February, between Terminalia and Redifugium. The 5th century writer Macrobius says that the Romans intercalated 22 and 23 days in alternate years. The intercalation was placed after the 23rd of February and the remaining 5 days of February followed. To avoid the Nona falling on a Nundinal, where necessary, an intercalary day was inserted in the middle of the Terminalia, where they placed the intercalary month. This is historically correct. In 167 BC Intercalaris began on the day after the 23rd of February, and in 170 BC it began on the second day after the 23rd of February. Varro, writing in the 1st century BC, says the 12th month was February, and when intercalations take place the 5 last days of this month are removed. Since all the days after the Ides of Intercalaris were counted down to the beginning of March, Intercalaris had either 27 days or 28. There is another theory which says that in intercalary years February had 23 or 24 days and Intercalaris had 27. No date is offered for the Redifugium in 378 years. The Pontifex Maximus determined when an intercalary month was to be inserted. On average, this happened in alternate years. The system of aligning the year through intercalary months broke down at least twice. The first time was during and after the Second Punic War. It led to the reform of the Lex Sicilia in 191 BC, the details of which are unclear, but it appears to have successfully regulated intercalation for over a century. The second breakdown was in the middle of the 1st century BC and may have been related to the increasingly chaotic and adversarial nature of Roman politics at the time. The position of Pontifex Maximus was not a full-time job. It was held by a member of the Roman elite, who would almost invariably be involved in the machinations of Roman politics, because the term of office of elected Roman magistrates was defined in terms of a Roman calendar year. A Pontifex Maximus would have reason to lengthen a year in which he or his allies were in power, or shorten a year in which his political opponents held office. For example, Julius Caesar made the year of his 3rd consulship in 46 BC 445 days long. Although there are many stories to interpret the intercalation, but a period of 22 or 23 days is always 3/4 synodic month. Obviously, the month beginnings shift forward after intercalation. Months. In the earliest times, the 3 reference dates were probably declared publicly when appropriate lunar conditions were observed. After the reforms of Numa, they occurred on fixed days. Calendae, calends, first day of the month. It is thought to have originally been the day of the new moon. According to some ancient and modern proposed etymologies of the word, it was derived from the phrase Kalo Uno Cavala Kalo Uno Novella, meaning respectively, Hollow Juno I call you, and New Juno I call you, an announcement about the nona, or in proclaiming the new moon that marked the calends which the pontiffs made every first day of the month on the Capitoline Hill in the announcement hall. Idus or Idus Ides, thought to have originally been the day of the full moon, was the 15th day of March, May, July, and October, and the 13th day of the others. Nona, thought to have originally been the day of the half-moon. The nona was 8 days before the Ides, and fell on the 5th of 7th day of the month, depending on the position of the Ides. The day preceding the calends, nona, or Ides, was Pride, e.g., Prid, id, Mart, equals the 14th of March. Other days were denoted by ordinal number, counting back from a named reference day. The reference day itself counted as the first, so that 2 days before was denoted the third day. Dates were written as A.D. NN, an abbreviation for anti-DMNN, meaning on the anti-H day before the named reference day, e.g. AD. 3 Cal. November equals on the third day before the November calends equals the 30th of October. The value 2 was not used to denote a day before the fixed point, because second was the same as Pride. Further examples of date equivalents are A.D. IV non. Jan equals the 2nd of January. A.D. Vi non. Mai equals the 2nd of May. A.D. Ated. April equals the 6th of April. A.D. Ated. October equals the 8th of October. A.D. 17 Cal. November equals the 16th of October. In detail, the system worked as follows. Months were grouped in days such that the calends was the first day of the month, the Ides was the 13th day of short months, or the 15th day of long months, and the nona was the 9th day before the Ides. All other days of the month were counted backward from these 3 dates. In both long and short months there were 16 days between the Ides of the month and the calends of the next month, and the date referred to the name of the next month, not that of the current month. Thus, for example, the date of the 16th day of March was A.D. 17 Cal. April. In intercalary years, the first part of February was terminated on the 23rd, i.e., the day of the Terminalia, and the festivals normally held in the last 5 days of February were held instead in the last 5 days of the intercalary month, immediately before the calends of March. The first 22 or 23 days of the intercalary month were inserted between these 2 parts. So, in long months, and October, the days were divided into first day of the month, 1 day for the calends of the month, second to 6th days of the month, 5 days before the nona, 7th day of the month, 1 day for the nona, 8th to 14th days of the month, 7 days before the Ides, 15th day of the month, 1 day for the Ides, 16th to 31st days of the month, 16 days before the calends of the next month. In short months, September, November and December, the days were divided into first day of the month, 1 day for the calends of the month, second to 4th days of the month, 3 days before the nona, 5th day of the month, 1 day for the nona, 6th to 12th days of the month, 7 days before the Ides, 13th day of the month, 1 day for the Ides, 14th to 29th days of the month, 16 days before the calends of the next month. In ordinary years, the days in February were divided into first day of the month, 1 day for the calends of February, 2nd to 4th days of the month, 3 days before the nona, 5th day of the month, 1 day for the nona, 6th to 12th days of the month, 7 days before the Ides, 13th day of the month, 1 day for the Ides, 14th to 28th days of the month, 15 days before the calends of March. In intercalary years, the days in February were divided into first day of the month, 1 day for the the calends of February 2nd to 4th days of the month, 3 days before the non-or 5th day of the month, 1 day for the non-or 6th to 12th days of the month, 7 days before the Ides 13th day of the month, 1 day for the Ides 14th day onwards, counting down to a festival out of the calends of the intercalary month. The days of the intercalary month inserted in intercalary years were divided into first day of the intercalary month, 1 day for the calends of the intercalary month, 2nd to 4th days of the intercalary month, 3 days before the non-or 5th day of the intercalary month, 1 day for the non-or 6th to 12th days of the intercalary month, 7 days before the Ides 13th day of the intercalary month, 1 day for the Ides 14th day onwards, counting down to the calends of March. Some dates were also sometimes known by the name of a festival that occurred on them, or shortly afterwards. Examples of such dates are recorded for the Feralia, Quirinalia, and Determinalia, though not yet for the Lupercalia. The known examples of such dates are all after the Ides of February, which suggests they are connected with resolving an ambiguity that could arise in intercalary years. Dates of the form A.D. Cal. Mart were dates in late February in regular years, but were a month later in intercalary years. However, it is much debated whether there was a fixed rule for using festival-based dates. It has been variously proposed that a date like A.D. Exterminalia implied that its year was not, or might have been, intercalary. When Julius Caesar added days to some of the months, he added them to the end of the month, so as not to disturb the dates of festivals in those months. This increased the count of all days after the Ides in those months, and had some odd effects. For example, the Emperor Augustus was born in 63 BC on the 23rd day of September. In the pre-Julian calendar, this is 7 days before the calends of October, but in the Julian calendar, it is 8 days. Because of this ambiguity, his birthday was sometimes celebrated on both dates. See discussion in Julian calendar. Nundinal cycle. The Romans of the Republic, like the Etruscans, used a market week of 8 days marked as A2H in the calendar. A nundinum was the market day. Etymologically, the word is related to Novem 9, because the Roman system of counting was inclusive. The market week is the nundinal cycle. Since the length of the year was not a multiple of 8 days, the letter for the market day changed every year. For example, if the letter for market days in some year was A and the year was 355 days long, then the letter for the next year would be F. The nundinal cycle formed one rhythm of day-to-day Roman life. The market day was the day when country people would come to the city, and the day when city people would buy their 8 days' worth of groceries. For this reason, a law was passed in 287 BC that forbade the holding of meetings of the comitia on market days, but permitted the holding of legal actions. In the late Republic, a superstition arose that it was unlucky to start the year with a market day, and the pontiffs, who regulated the calendar, took steps to avoid it, because the nundinal cycle was absolutely fixed at 8 days under the Republic. Information about the dates of market days is one of the most important tools used for working out the Julian equivalent of a Roman date in the pre-Julian calendar. In the early empire, the Roman market day was occasionally changed. The details of this are not clear, but one likely explanation put forward is that it would be moved by 1 day if it fell on the same day as the festival of Regifugium, an event that could occur at intervals of 3 years. The reason for this movement has not been explained. The nundinal cycle was eventually replaced by the modern 7-day week, which first came into use in Italy during the early imperial period, after the Julian calendar had come into effect in 45 BC. The system of nundinal letters was also adapted for the week. For a while, the week and the Nundinal cycle coexisted, but by the time the week was officially adopted by Constantine in AD 321, the Nundinal cycle had fallen out of use. For further information on the week, see Week and Days of the Week. Character of the day. Each day of the Roman calendar was marked on the fasti with a letter that designated its religious and legal character. These were days when it was legal to initiate action in the courts of civil law. A day on which the Roman people could hold assemblies, and when these political activities and the administration of justice were prohibited. Of elusive meaning, but marking ferii, public holidays. A day when it was religiously permissible for the rex to call for an assembly, and for days that were fasti in the morning, when sacrifices were being prepared, as well as in the evening, while sacrifices were being offered, but were fasti in the middle of the day. Years. The calendar year originally began on the 1st of March, as is shown by the names of the 6 months following June. It is not known when the start of the calendar year was changed to the 1st of January. Ancient authors attributed it to Numa Pompilius. The Varro states that, according to M. Flavus Nobilia, who had composed a commentary on a fasti preserved in the Temple of Hercules Museum, January was named after Janus because the god faced both ways, which implies the calendar year started in January in his time, before the consular year started beginning on the 1st of January in 153 BC. A surviving calendar from the late Republic proves the calendar year started in January before the Julian reform. How years were identified during the Roman monarchy is not known. During the Roman Republic, years were named after the consuls, who were elected annually. Thus, the name of the year identified a consular term of office, not a calendar year. For example, 205 BC was the year of the consulship of Publius Cornelius Scipio Africanus and Publius Licinius Crassus, who took office on the 15th of March of that year, and their consular year ran until the 14th of March 204 BC. Lists of consuls were maintained in the fasti. The first day of the consular term changed several times during Roman history. The Senate changed it to the 1st of January in 153 BC in order to allow Consul Quintus Fulvius Nobilia to attack the city of Sagadia during the Celtiberian Wars. Before then, it was the 15th of March. Earlier changes are a little less certain. There is good reason to believe it was the 1st of May for most of the 3rd century BC, until 222 BC. Livy mentions earlier consular years starting on 1 Sextilis, the 15th of May, 15 December, the 1st of October and 1 Quintilis. In the later Republic, historians and scholars began to count years from the founding of the city of Rome. Different scholars use different dates for this event. The date most widely used today is that calculated by Varro, 753 BC, but other systems varied by up to several decades. Dates given by this method are numbered ab urbi condita and correspond to consular years. When reading ancient works using AUC dates, care must be taken to determine the epoch used by the author before translating the date into a Julian year. In parts of the Roman Empire, it was common to date by the provincial year. In Roman Africa, year 1 was AD 39, in Hispania it was 38. Thus, to arrive at AD dates for Africa and Spain it is necessary to add 39 and 38, respectively, to the provincial year. The Spanish provincial year was the basis of the Spanish era, the dating system common throughout Spain during the Middle Ages. Extant fasti. A considerable number of inscribed calendars, or fasti, have been discovered. The Praenestine calendar, discovered in 1770, arranged by the famous grammarian Varius Flaccus, contains the months of January, March, April, and December, and a portion of February. The tablets give an account of festivals, and also of the triumphs of Augustus and Tiberius. There are still two complete calendars in existence, an official list by Philocalus, and a Christian version of the official calendar, made by Polemius Silvius, converting pre-Julian dates. The fact that the modern world uses the same month names as the Romans can lead to an erroneous assumption that a Roman date occurred on the same Julian date as its modern equivalent. Even early Julian dates, before the leap year cycle was stabilized, are not quite what they appear to be. For example, Macrobius says 45 BC was not a leap year. Finding the exact Julian equivalent of a pre-Julian date is complex, as there exists an essentially complete list of the consuls. A Julian year can be found to correspond to the pre-Julian year. However, the sources rarely reveal which years were irregular, which were intercalary, and how long an intercalary year was. Nevertheless, the pre-Julian calendar could be substantially out of alignment with the Julian calendar. Two precise astronomical synchronisms given by Livy show that in 168 BC, the two calendars were misaligned by more than 2 months, and in 190 BC, they were 4 months out of alignment. A number of other clues are available to reconstruct the Julian equivalent of pre-Julian dates. First, the precise Julian date for the start of the Julian calendar is known, although some uncertainty occurs even about that. Detailed sources for the previous decade or so are found mostly in the letters and speeches of Cicero. Combining these with what is known about how the calendar worked, especially the Nundinal cycle, an accurate conversion of Roman dates after 58 BC relative to the start of the Julian calendar can be performed. The histories of Livy give exact Roman dates for 2 eclipses in 190 BC in 168 BC, and a few loose synchronisms to dates in other calendars provide rough solutions for the intervening period. Before 190 BC, the alignment between the Roman and Julian years is determined by clues such as the dates of harvests mentioned in the sources. Combining these sources of data, an estimate can be computed for approximate Julian equivalents of Roman dates back to the start of the First Punic War in 264 BC. However, while there are enough data to make such reconstructions, the number of years before 45 BC for which pre-Julian Roman dates can be converted to Julian dates with certainty is very small, and several different reconstructions of the pre-Julian calendar are possible. A detailed reconstruction giving conversions from pre-Julian dates into Julian dates is available.